if you're listening to this podcast, just know that I made it through, I don't know, I'd probably say one of the craziest weekends of my life, because I'll quickly, it's the Monday episode. Like I said, if you're listening to this, I made it through. On Thursday night at midnight, I did what's called a ruck race, and it was 200 miles, and there were 7 people on the team. Basically 36 hours we had to finish, and so essentially I did around 26 miles in 36 hours. We drove in a bus. Everyone went to their stop. You drop the runner off. You go to the next stop to pick them up. It was incredible. The team that I was on was incredible, and I just wanted to, give a shout out. If you are, I think I posted the link on Twitter if you're looking to donate. I'll make sure that link is up on my Twitter if you're listening to this episode. But just want to give a shout out. Heroes in Transition is who the company that put together, the charity that put together the race. It was, as crazy as it was a ton of fun. And like I said, I made it and the team was great. But over this past weekend, and also shout out to Danny for covering me on Friday, because that was when the day of the race was the day that Danny covered me. But in the past, so maybe it was Friday. I know I saved this either from Friday or over the weekend at some point. But the one thing that I think the big news that PSA came out with was that they're going to be adding grading notes to some of these services. Now, the headlines that I saw, and that I think a lot of people probably saw, was that PSA is gonna add grading notes, and that was the headline. Now, if you listen to what the CEO said, he did an interview with Jeff at Sports Card Investors, and he was talking about this. And the one thing that he added at the end was, we're gonna add it to the express and higher levels of service. Now, I think I would say for this piece of what PSA is going to do, for it to be a success, they have to be able to roll it out to other services. Like, if they roll this out, and because the thing is, like, the information within these notes, I think, would be very useful for everybody who is sending stuff into PSA. And if you're sending stuff in at an express level, there's probably a decent chance that you know what you're doing. There's probably a decent chance that you either submit cards all the time, or you know what to look for on these cards. And I think it would be useful for people who, and I guess I understand why they maybe can't do it this way, but I just think that they have to be able to figure out a way to roll it out to all the services. Because if you can see, the notes of why a card got an 8 or a 7 or a 6, the 9s are probably so close to the 10s that it's really going to be something very minuscule. It's going to be useful for everybody. If you're somebody who grades frequently, or you want to grade frequently, I just think it's something that they should be able to roll out. The only problem I think that will arise from it is that when they're saying, what he said on the podcast is basically like, if we find out that it's successful, we'll roll it out to all the tiers. But it's like, the only really, it's going to see, if you don't get a PSA 10 on your card, you're going to be probably a little bit upset, if I'm going to be honest. Like, obviously you're going to be upset. So the level of satisfaction for somebody who would get greater notes and understand why a card got a certain grade, like, if it got a 10, there probably aren't going to be any notes. So it's like, and I think the difference between a 10 and a 9 on a modern card has got to be very minuscule. Like, it could be, I guess it could be centering, it could be a scratch, or it could be, one of the corners was chipped or something, or it could be a chipping of something on the card. It's going, you're asking people who are not happy with the grades of their cards to determine the level of success of something that they're, I'm trying to think of exactly how to say it. You are asking the people who got bad grades on their card, because if I'm going to be honest, depending on what kind of card you're sending in, if you get a 9, you're probably pretty upset about that, because a 9, for most cards, you're almost breaking even when you're, depending on what card you're buying in terms of price. The 10 is obviously what you're shooting for. If it's a modern card, maybe if it's an older card, that's going to be different, but like, you are asking customers who are receiving grades that they probably don't want, like what their satisfaction level is with the service. I could see how some people would look at it and say, okay, well, now this will be good for what I want to grade next. Some people are just be like, hey, I didn't get the grade that I want. I disagree with what your grader said. Now, the other piece of this that I think will be very interesting will be honestly, the consistency of human grading is really, that's where I think they could, potentially just shut down this whole program because the consistency between different graders is because human grading, just in general, they're not going to be consistent. Sure, and I know I've had this argument a billion times, and I understand what people are saying, where they're saying there's standards and the people are great. The people that are grading, they're getting trained to do it this way. I just don't the human eye on 10 different people is just not the same when you're looking at one thing. And so the grading notes, I think eventually there's probably going to be some sort of database, and I don't know if they probably won't say this was grader Jon Snow or whatever. I'm making up a name. Obviously, that's from Game of Thrones. But I'm saying Jon Snow, in all of his grading notes, says that if the centering isn't this, he won't give it a grade. So I think that potentially could happen as well, where, with umpires, like we know how, and I think umpiring actually is a pretty good example here if we're comparing grading and what it could be compared to. Like, everybody knows Angel Hernandez, the umpire in baseball, is horrible. So, like, what if hypothetically there is an Angel Hernandez within PSA who everybody, for whatever reason, everyone knows, and it could be because of these grading notes, everyone, if they come out with the name of the person that's grading the cards with the notes, which, you may not be able to come out with the name, but like if let's just say somebody plugs in, they get 10 cards or something, and they get 10 grading notes from the 10 cards. They plug in the grading notes into some sort of, I don't know, AI database, and they say if somebody, they figure out who could grade, who graded the card, or they figure something out. So they figure out that there is an Angel Hernandez grader at PSA who's just like horrible at grading, and the reason they know is because of the way they write. Now, I would say this is more of a conspiracy than anything else. I'm just kind of picking and prodding at where I think it could go wrong, if I'm going to be honest. I'm hoping that it goes well. I'm hoping that they can launch it with everything, and I'm hoping that it will give people, I don't know, closure, I guess, is one way to even look at it, because like if your card gets an 8 or a 7, or if it gets a 9, 8, 7, you're probably looking at it and saying, I don't know why this card got a 6 or a 7, and then this other card got a 10. Hopefully it gives people the, like I said, the closure that, finally they can say, well, now we know why this card, and then it's just going to come out of the consistency of the actual grading notes versus what's on the card, because it's only going to take one. It will literally only take one card of one person to put out the notes that they got from PSA that said there's a scratch on this card, and then they are showing pictures of the card and there's no scratch. It'll only take one for people to come out and say this is a failure, because if you listen to this podcast, you probably know how quick the hobby is to judge when companies are either trying new things or doing just things in general. So it'll take one card basically for people to consider this a failure. So I'm hoping that, it's going to be a process, the same way that everything is within this hobby, the same way that, Fanatics said they're going to 10x the hobby. Clearly they haven't done it, but it's like, again, it's a meme at this point. So I think that was what could potentially happen with PSA. I hope it maybe doesn't, because again, I would like to hope that the grading notes will help people. It'll help people grade their cards smarter, and they won't send in just a billion cards. They'll actually be able to look at the card and say, well, okay, because this person said this thing, I'll look at the next cards that I'm sending in. If I can see any of this stuff, I'll know what kind of grades I'm getting, because this could be a phenomenal success for PSA, or I think it could be a phenomenal failure, really just based on how I think people how I think people receive the notes that they're getting, and if they know that, they got to look at their cards more clearly, that's going to help grow. That's going to help people's knowledge of grading and within the hobby. But if people just look at the notes and say, "Oh, well, this," if they just get upset because of what the notes say, that's where I think PSA could do the right thing and they could do everything correct, but the hobby may not receive it that way. But I do think, realistically, honestly, I do think it could go either way at this point. So we'll see once they actually start rolling out this program how everything goes. Now, today, not today. It would have been yesterday. Topps, I think, came out with a pretty big story that I, on one hand, really like, but on the other hand, I have a suggestion, and I'll get into it. So, Topps, essentially, they are extending all of the expiration dates for redemptions from 2 years to 10 years. And they are, I believe they said that they are retroactively changing the ones from, I think it was either 2020 or 2021. I forget the year that they said they were starting it, but with those ones, those have the new timer. So, like, they would have already been expired at this point, which, again, on one hand, I like it. On the other hand, I'm like, well, this would have been nice if, and actually, wait, maybe it was, I don't know, either way. So if you have redemptions from them, you can go back. And, I just think that, again, the thing that I like about it is, you've heard me talk about on this podcast probably, that I just don't think redemptions should have expiration dates. That just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you can get a card signed, and Topps, I think, should actively be trying to get players to sign cards. I understand that they have to fulfill what's coming up, but they almost should have a team of, I think that they should have a team of employees who are actively trying to get old redemptions signed. Because, they're under contract, so, like, or at least they should be. They shouldn't be having to, like, in theory, they already paid for the autographs, so they shouldn't be having to pay for the autographs again. So this is work that the athletes should have already done, and if they haven't, I'm guessing that maybe they get paid once the autographs get put in, and the contracts that they had, the athletes just looked at and said, well, we don't want to do it because the amount of work, like, if you're a superstar, the amount of work that probably goes into signing all of these autographs, it maybe isn't worth what the price tag of the redemptions, or price tag of what you're getting paid to sign the cards. I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily a good mindset to have. I suppose I understand why you might have that mindset if you are, a multi-millionaire, and maybe it's like, I don't know, maybe it's like you signed a big contract and, like, but when you were a rookie, you didn't have a big contract, so the contract for autographs that you signed was, I don't know, something like, I don't know how much they get paid, I'm just making it up, like $10 or $15 per autograph, and you have like 10,000 autographs to sign, so it's like, it's pennies on the dollar, really, compared to the money that you're making playing the sport. So it should be their obligation to sign these. I don't think that there's a way necessarily that they can penalize them for not signing stuff. If they have to be the ones to pay some sort of fine, again, like, I don't know, there's no way that the MLB Players Association would accept some sort of crazy fine of them not signing autographs. And again, if it's pennies on the dollar, they might just say, yeah, I'm just going to take the fine. I don't want to sign these. Now, again, so I think that Topps should have a team of people who are trying to get unfulfilled. Like, this should be a big piece of the Topps' business, or on their back end, is them trying to actively get players who have not signed their redemptions to sign the cards, and sign the cards that need to be signed, so that way they can get these redemptions filled. Now, another thing could be that, like, maybe if it was during the COVID time period, they maybe sent the cards to the player or something like that. And I think there has to be a representative there. I'm not actually 100% sure, but maybe they sent the cards to the player, and now the player just doesn't even know where the cards are. So I can understand from that standpoint where, obviously there's nothing they can really do about that. But if they have the cards, they just need to figure out a way to fulfill these redemptions. Like, it just doesn't, it seems like Fanatics has said they want to get rid of redemptions, and I think it's really one of the scammier, I think, parts of the hobby is redemptions, because it's just like, it's like, it almost seems like it's like a bad business to have something like that within a product. Like, imagine if you know, I don't know, bought a pair of shoes, and they're just like, oh yeah, the laces, we don't have, you can get these shoes, but you can't get we don't have the laces for the shoes yet, so you have to wait for the laces. It's like, well, yeah, but then what's the point of buying these shoes in the first place if they don't come with laces? Like, what's the point of buying these products if the autographs that they're saying are going to be in the product are not in there? Now, the piece of this that I don't really like is that there's an expiration date on the redemptions at all. Like, it just seems, like I said, again, if there is a possibility for them to get these cards signed, they need to be signed no matter what. I don't think adding extra years onto redemption expiration dates really makes that much of a difference. Like, what's realistically, what is the difference between 10 years or 0 deadline? Like, if you are opening a product 9 years past the release date and there was a redemption in there, or, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it ends up being, like somebody opening up 2018 Bowman baseball with the Luis Robert redemption in there, that one, I would think that one probably would be included in the expiration date, because I have seen some Luis Robert autographs in circulation. So that's one where I think you would probably be able to still send that in, because they must have the cards, and I don't think it's fair. Like, I don't know if Topps does this. I don't think they do. I can't imagine they would, is putting old autographs into new products. Like, putting autographs that should be in older products, that should be redemptions, into the newer products. I hope they don't do that. It really wouldn't make much sense to do that, because it really, again, that seems pretty scammy, so I don't think they would. But overall, the 10 years versus the no expiration date, I don't see a difference between the two, and I think it would be better if they just did no expiration date on the autographs. Because it's just like, again, I understand that, maybe they have inventory that they have to get rid of or something like that, and that's maybe why they have the expiration date on these. It's like, if you don't send in I don't know, I guess, because that's another thing. It's like, I don't know what happens to cards that are, the redemptions have been fulfilled by the player, but the actual redemptions themselves have not been sent in. Because what happens to those cards? Like, I don't know what happens to them. I'm sure that would be something interesting that maybe Topps could talk about potentially. Also, we're probably going to see some more Topps news over the next week or so, because it's the Topps industry conference. So this is just, I think, a big change that they're making. I like that they're extending the deadline. I wish that they would just get rid of the deadline. It doesn't make much sense to me to have this, because, like I said, if they have the cards and they have the autographs, an expiration doesn't make much sense. Like, if you send in your redemption and you have to get like points, or you have to get store credit or something, if there's just no way for them to get the autograph, I suppose I understand. But like, for Topps, it should be extremely important, in my opinion, for them to try and get these autographs, and try and get the players to sign, because again, Fanatics has said redemptions are really something they're trying to get rid of, because I don't know, it really just is such like a scam, in my opinion. Like, the fact that they can advertise that there's going to be an autograph, but then you have to send the card in, and you have to do all this extra work to get your autograph. It's like, that just doesn't seem fair, and especially somebody who's new to sports cards. That's kind of the other thing. It's like, if you're, I don't know, someone casually opening up a couple boxes, like, at this point it's a little bit expensive, so maybe there aren't people doing this. But if you're somebody who's casually opening up boxes and you're expecting to get autographs and you get redemptions, you're sitting there like, wait, what the hell is this? Like, then you have to look into all this stuff, and maybe you don't know, so it's like, you just never send it in, and that's what ends up leading to redemptions being unfulfilled. And then, like I said, I don't know what happens to those cards that don't get fulfilled. And I think I don't know, there's another story that I probably want to talk about on tomorrow's episode that is about Topps announcing the independent auditing firm, which I talked about, I don't know,
when it was part of a story that broke when Michael Rubin was going on. Michael Rubin went on Bill Simmons' podcast, and he talked about him hiring, I think it was Deloitte was the independent firm to audit the company and where the cards were going to make sure that there weren't any loaded boxes, which I don't know. I've seen mixed reactions of people believing it and not believing it online. And I don't know if it's been really that big of an issue with Topps. It's clearly, in my opinion, a big issue with Panini. So if Panini will never do this, because look, it's a conspiracy, but I'm fairly convinced that something is going on with Panini where they're sending boxes to people that are like loaded boxes to breakers, because it's just like, the amount of specific breakers that are getting cards that are like, and it's not just like some random one of ones or some random, it's like they're getting the number one card in the whole entire product. Like, you know, I don't know. I mean, and like I said, this is something that I'm going to talk about probably on tomorrow's episode, but we have the first kind of piece of big news that Topps came out with this week is that they are, you know, extending the redemption expiration date. Again, I think it's good they're doing that, but I do wish that they would just completely eliminate the expiration date all to begin with. Like I mentioned on yesterday's episode, the Topps Industry Conference is going on this week, and I mean, I guess they decided that Tuesday was going to be the day where they released like all of their big news, because some of the stories are pretty massive. Now, there is one thing I will touch on before we get into some of the stories, which it's important. It's important. It seems that unfortunately Mike Trout did injure his knee, and he's going to be out for a little bit. You know, Mike Trout is, I think, a player that is almost synonymous with sports cards and with the hobby. So when it comes to news about Mike Trout, I feel like it is sort of sports card related, if I'm going to be honest. I feel like there are other athletes where maybe it isn't, but I feel like Trout definitely synonymous within the hobby, so it's really unfortunate to see him kind of go down like that. Now, Topps, like I said, if they have 2 or 3 more days of this type of news breaking, like they must have came out with all of the important news yesterday, because if they kept coming out with this type of news throughout this week, it would be insane. So, you know, some of the things, just a couple, you know, I think some of the bigger stories, I don't know, I'm kind of deciding which way I want to go with this, actually. I think I'll go with what I think was the biggest story, was that Topps Chrome basketball has been announced, and a lot of other basketball products have also been announced. I have a tweet here. So Topps Chrome, Midnight Cosmo Chrome, Finest, Motif, I think is how you pronounce it, Royalty Collection, Collegiate Basketball, and Bowman U Chrome were all the basketball products that were announced, which that's a huge upgrade just from, it used to be just Bowman Chrome U as of just last year, and before that there really wasn't much. You had some of the basketball players in Allen and Ginter, but one of the images that they showed was Victor Wembanyama. It was a Victor Wembanyama Topps rookie. Looked like it even had an autograph, Topps rookie autograph, from what looks like a Topps Chrome set. So I don't know like what that Topps Chrome set is necessarily going to look like. I think we're still waiting on more details from that, but it has been announced there is going to be a Topps Chrome basketball set. Now, obviously, it's not licensed. It's not part of their licensed set yet, which actually one of the other interesting pieces that I saw over these past couple days was the dates. Sorry, I have the dates right here. It was the NFL and NBA dates were released. Sorry, I had the dates up 2 seconds ago and I lost them. It looks like, from what I've seen, it looks like the NFL is going to start in 2025, and then NBA is going to start in 2026, which I guess is maybe some of the dates that they have either announced, or I haven't seen them tweet about it necessarily, but I have seen people say that these are pretty much the solid dates of when the NBA and NFL licenses are going to be coming over to Topps and Fanatics. That, you know, I don't know. I mean, I really, like I said, I think last year at the industry conference, yeah, I guess around this time period is when Bronny signing an NIL deal kind of got leaked. I guess it did get leaked, but then when it came out, obviously important, but it got leaked. And what ended up happening from that leak was people were kind of buying the Topps Chrome All-American basketball because they assumed Bronny was going to be in there, and then he didn't end up being until the next product, which, I don't know. That was, I think, sports card people trying to speculate on something that hadn't really been announced fully. I'm hoping, I hope that people didn't really go all in on that type of thing. And I don't know, I'm sure there probably was a couple people that unfortunately did. But Bronny ended up being in the next year. So that kind of was a leak that came from, I think, last year's conference. So another piece of info here, the MLS debut patches have been fully announced. We saw the patches on the jerseys, I think with Sergio Aguero, his patch was on his jersey. Messi, unfortunately, I guess missed the boat here, unfortunately, because he made his debut last season before they came out with the patches. So any new players that are coming over from overseas are going to be getting these first patches, which I think now, one thing that's been interesting about soccer to me is that there's never been, I guess there are, in my opinion, there have never been definitive rookie cards within soccer. What is the best rookie card for some sort of soccer player? I am going to have to debate that these MLS debut patches, they're going to be up there in the top 2 or 3 cards for most soccer players, because, soccer is one of those sports where it's not like there are, a billion different products that are coming out every year for soccer, and especially, back just even a couple of years ago, there really wasn't that many. 2018, for example, was really the first year where soccer cards really started. A bunch of sets were made all kind of, and that's where it all started with the consistency. So I think this is going to be a big card. Next piece of information here. So Carlos Alcatraz, who is if you never heard of him, he's basically the number one young tennis player in the world right now. He is a monster. He's won a bunch of tournaments, and he's probably ranked number 1. I mean, he probably is either 1 or 2 whenever you're looking at his ranking, but this dude's a beast. And it announced that he is going to have his first ever autographs in Topps cards in 2024 Topps Chrome this summer, which, he did have Leaf, I believe, came out with the Net Pro set. They came out with the version basically of I think it was Serena. I forget exactly who the original design they took from for this new card. But then there was also a new design that they came out with that had autographs. So technically, if you're looking for this, for his autographs, you're going to be looking in a previous set to this one. But it looks like he's signed with Topps, and he's pretty much, in my opinion, the biggest name in tennis right now. Now, we also have more NFL products announced. Now, it looks like there's more rookie NFL products. I think this is kind of a big deal here. 2023 Topps Motive Football is coming soon, is basically this announcement. And it's a picture of a CJ Stroud card with a autograph on it, and also a rookie logo. So, that... I don't know exactly. See, this is where we get into some category. This is where we get into some territories that I don't really love within sports cards, how we're kind of skirting a little bit of the rules. I guess maybe if this product is slated to come out in the next month before the season starts for the next NFL, I guess you could still come out with rookie cards from the previous year. It looks like it must, because it's a CJ Stroud card with a rookie logo and an autograph. I guess you can. I guess there are still Panini products coming out for football, even though the season is over and the draft has already happened. I don't know. That if you've heard me rant, you probably heard me rant about fixing this whatever schedule they've got here. I just don't think they. I don't know. I think the release schedule needs to be more thought out, and I don't know. Maybe it's they didn't get the autograph until later. Maybe this was just the plan all along to come out with these products late like this. I don't really know. Whatever ends up happening, this product basically got previewed. And for the most part, those are the big stories that came out. At least in my opinion. If you go to Topps, they pretty much have been tweeting stuff out all day, which I think is pretty cool because they've been the one tweeting out the announcements, which I think is very interesting, where in the past, maybe it's been, tweeted out by, I don't know, other news sources potentially. I think maybe we haven't seen, this is one of I guess it would be Fanatics' first full rollout of news for the Topps Industry Conference, because I think last year it was Fanatics had just really come on to the program here, and they didn't really have the full plan. Like, they had a full year to plan for basically what's happening this week and releasing all of this stuff. So there's going to be more information that comes out, and like I said, I'm going to be covering it as it comes out. Hopefully more stuff will be out today and then tomorrow and then maybe the next day. But either way, I'm hoping I'm going to cover everything that I see that is important for the podcast. So if you're following the industry conference and you kind of want to get more information on it, I guess just come back to the podcast. If there's going to be more info that they're going to release, then I'll probably be covering it. So that's all we've got for the podcast. So thank you all for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. On yesterday's episode, I talked about a couple different pieces of Topps news that was coming out from the industry conference, which I thought I thought it was going on for the full week. I guess I was asking Danny about it today, because I had a weekly meeting or whatever, and he said that it was over today. Or yesterday, I guess, depending on when you're listening to this. I'm recording it on, Wednesday. It was over. So I guess that they did basically put all the news out on Tuesday of all the good stuff. I mean, I do think that there was a lot of good announcements, if I'm going to be honest. And I think it was a lot of, I did see people not super impressed, but it's like, I mean, what do you really, I don't know. Actually, no, that's not true. I saw one person. I want to check myself there and make sure that I'm not making up arguments that don't exist. I saw one person, I was like, oh, this is not very cool. It's like, yeah, no, it is. All the stuff is big news, and it's a very big deal. And so with that, there isn't much Topps news necessarily left. I guess there probably will be a little bit more that trickles out as the week goes on. It's Thursday, so maybe Friday and then into the weekend. I will be on Hobby Hotline this weekend, so I think I have an idea for the episode that I want to do. I think I want to do like a tier list of all of the pieces of news that came out. I guess we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm not sure 100% if I'm going to do that or not. But I think probably since they came out with all that big news the other day, there really wasn't too much news necessarily. There was one thing that I thought was pretty cool. So at the Dodgers and Atlanta game, apparently there was like a huge bee infestation somehow on the fence, which it's beyond me how that even happens. Like, how does that even get there in the first place? Like, because there was like so many bees there, and I don't know how they didn't notice. Maybe it's just like they were, maybe they didn't have a couple games for like a week or two, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger, I guess. Like I said, I don't really know how no one noticed that was there. But the piece of news that's sports car related is that the person who got rid of the bees has his own Topps Now card. And it is a random thing, and it is something where I actually have not seen any negative news about it, which I think it's cool. And I think it's not like a product where, there's that much weighing on the card coming out. Like, it's just a cool card. Like, people want to buy it. This guy now has his own Topps card he's a beekeeper, or a bee exterminator. Maybe not a keeper because he's getting rid of the bees. But either way, I mean, it's a really cool card. And like I said, I didn't see much negative about it on Twitter over the past day or so when I've been looking at it. Which, to add to that, I just think that's how I wish maybe sports cards were a little bit more of the time. Not sports cards, people within the sports card community. Because it's really something that is cool. First of all, it's cool, I think. Second of all, it's just not really that big of a deal. Like, people were upset about like the solar eclipse card, and random celebrities get Topps Now cards. You always see people coming out of the woodwork being like, oh, this is blah blah blah, like, this is annoying, like, why are they doing this? It's like the Topps Now product, I think, is perfect for this type of thing. I also still do think that Topps Now is an actually very underrated product overall. Like, I I think that the Topps Now rookies of the whatever the first rookie card with the logo, or even the debut card, because in my opinion, like last year, I think like the Ellie De La Cruz debut card, I think is probably a decent card to buy. Like, you know, if you're looking to, I don't know, invest, or if you're looking to spend money on cards where 10 years from now they could have some monetary value, maybe a little bit more than what you paid for it. Because those cards, you know, they will run you $5-6 per card. Like, I think if you buy 5 of them, they're $20.99 or something like that. So I actually think those cards are decent. You know, if you're looking for cards that I think will be underrated for quite some time, in my opinion. I don't see the consensus of the card changing really anytime soon. I actually maybe don't think ever, to be honest, because like I always thought, you know, with football, that there was, you know, wide receivers and running backs and defensive players were going to get their shine eventually, and it really has just seemed like I've been saying that for like 3 or 4 years at this point, and it really doesn't seem like that's going to happen. And again, this is... If I'm going back to my roots within sports cards, this was a lot of what I was trying to do in terms of like finding underrated stuff that I thought could be valuable in the future, and just things that were interesting to me that I felt like that people were kind of overlooking. For example, the Bowman rookie, I think, is actually another decent card where you look at the amount of those cards versus the amount of like the regular Topps rookie or even the Bowman Chrome card. I thought the association with Bowman Chrome and it being a Bowman Chrome rookie, I thought added value that is not necessarily there on the surface, because, you know, obviously it's just another rookie along the many rookies that come out every year. But the branding of it, I thought was important. And then what that got me into was just looking at other, you know, sports card brands and seeing how popular they were, and then trying to figure out how I could apply that to other ones. And it's just like, I don't know, it's a fun way to make content, in my opinion. Like, it wasn't really necessarily something that I thought is going to be groundbreaking. But I think with this one, with the Topps Now, there's just tons of factors. It's like, it's literally, you are guaranteed the first rookie for this player out of this product. Like, you know, when they make their debut, that Topps Now card comes out, first rookie logo, or if it's past the date of when rookies will be getting their cards this year, it'll have the call-up logo, which I still think actually is fine, because like I said, it is sort of an alternative option for a rookie. So like, if you're looking for something that's like, you know, it's an alternative, so it's like you're not going to find one-to-one the perfect card for this type of thing. Like, there are going to be things that probably change. Now, if you're looking at like Ellie De La Cruz, his Topps Now rookie this year versus like his call-up card last year, I do think that the call-up card is really good. I would say, you know, I think that's always that's a tricky situation. If the rookie is getting a Topps Now card before they get, or if they don't get a call-up card and they are just getting the Topps Now rookie, that's definitely the card that I would go with, because you're gonna find them fairly cheap. And then the other piece of this is, you know what the print run is, and that's in my opinion, one of the biggest things I think within sports cards that we underrate potentially. The information that we know versus the information that we don't know. I don't think us as, you know, I guess this is a commentary, I think, on sports cards that may or may not be true. I don't think we necessarily value the information that we're given versus the information that we're not given. Because if you look at the overall print run, like, I think that someone put together the Series 1 rough estimate of the print run, and they said it was around 1 million, or it was like 900,000 for the base rookie for a player. So if you can look at, and, you know, obviously Ellie De La Cruz and other, you know, big name rookies are going to have a higher print run than maybe some other rookies. But like, if you look at the print runs of those, you know the number, you know that even the highest print run card, you're only looking at like the highest print run card of all time for Topps Now is, you know, in the 40,000, which that's not even a rookie card, I don't believe, which I think it was, I mean, unfortunately, I do think that Wander Franco's rookie in there has one of the higher ones. I know that like the number one was like a Bernie Sanders card, which I think that's a very funny card. And I think people bought that card speculating, honestly, that it was going to be worth more, to be honest. Which, you know, you could argue one way or the other what it was. And the same with the Fauci card as well. I think that was another one where people like bought a ton of them because they, I don't know, they expected to see a decent amount of value from it. But the print run aspect of that card, I think, makes a big difference, in my opinion. And now, like with this, you know, Beekeeper card, like, well, it'll probably sell, you know, maybe a couple hundred. I don't know. I mean, I really don't see this. It's anybody. It's a viral story, so maybe people will buy it sort of as like a joke. But I just, you know, it just gets me back to the point of I think that the Topps Now cards may be more valuable than we think they are in the long run. But, you know, obviously, I think within sports cards, one thing to always keep in mind is that when people have made their mind up in sports cards, it's very hard to change their mind. So for there to be value in the cards, there will have to be some minds changed overall in the market, which, you know, like I said, can be pretty tough overall.
Trading card database, I think, is one of the better resources when it comes to finding specific cards that you're looking for. I mean, eBay, you could probably search for it, but if you go to, and I think it's just tcdb.com, you'll find, I mean, pretty much every set. And I think the cool part about the website itself is that it's like like community driven, where like people are uploading their pictures and that's how they're getting some cards that are on the website in general. But so they put out their most popular sets from April of 2024, and I guess it shouldn't be super surprising, but 17 of the 20 sets that were in this most popular list were all baseball. Number 8, 2023 Upper Deck came into the conversation. And then number 13, randomly, the 1990 Pro Set Football. And then 17 was 2023-24 Donruss Basketball. Then the rest of them were all baseball sets, and they range from like 2024 products, 2022, 2023. I mean, and then even back to some of those 1990 baseball sets. And then even there's, you know, Donruss 1989 is on this list. And I guess it shouldn't be super surprising. Now, I'll be interested to see what this list looks like for May, because the NBA and NFL playoffs, I mean, not NFL, NBA and NHL playoffs are going on. So I was a little bit surprised. I guess I was a little bit surprised that there weren't more basketball and hockey sets. I mean, not hockey as much, but basketball with the playoffs. But at the same time, April is like opening day. So that's one reason why I could see, you know, and I bet you what ends up happening, and I can actually see why maybe there's some of these random sets that are so popular on here are, the scenario is probably that, like, opening day comes around, you know, somebody who hasn't looked at their baseball cards in 10, 15, 20, which, you know, it's pretty messed up that actually 1990 is more than 30 years ago, which is insane. Like, there was some crazy meme that when 2020 came around, it was just like, we are as many years away from 2050 as we are away from 1990. Yeah, that's what it was. I was like, whoa, slow your roll there. That's insane. That's crazy to think that, you know, thinking that many years ahead is just as many years as that many years. And I understand for some people, maybe they're just going to go, well, yeah, obviously, dude, like, get over it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But so probably the scenario here is that somebody hasn't looked at their baseball cards, or they're looking through, you know, maybe it's an opening day tradition for them, potentially. It's either maybe an opening day tradition, or it's like opening day comes around, they're like, oh, maybe I'll look at these baseball cards. And that's why they're finding, you know, 1988 Topps and, you know, 1991 Donruss and 1991 Topps, just part of, you know, obviously what's considered like the junk wax era for baseball. But, and I don't know, I mean, I guess there isn't anything that's super surprising, because at first, when I was looking at this, I was more surprised that it was so baseball heavy because of the NBA and, you know, both the playoffs going on. But then I realized, oh, well, the NBA playoffs and NHL, I guess, too, they didn't really start until like a couple weeks ago. So, like, you had all of opening day before the playoffs started. Now, like I said, there's only 1990 Pro Set football. Now I think another scenario could be like when the draft or something comes around for football, like I guess that would have been something that could have been the same. But I do think that potentially this shows that baseball is actually it's almost like it's underrated, but not underrated at the same time, if that makes sense. Like, it's widely, I think, maybe the most popular sport among all of trading cards, because and I think that has to do with a couple different factors, just because I think there's probably more baseball cards than there are other sports. I guess that would be an interesting statistic. I don't know if that's even realistically a possibility to figure out, but I also think that, it's baseball cards, I think, are synonymous with trading cards. So, like, or sports cards, I guess you could say. Because, like, basically when I was, getting back into sports cards, I would tell people I'm into sports cards. They're like, oh, like baseball? And I'm like, yeah, kind of like baseball, but obviously I'm interested in basketball and soccer and football a little bit and hockey and kind of just the overall landscape of cards. So for me, it's kind of all of them. But I think that this does show that just in general, baseball is number one, probably by a long shot. And I think maybe people underrate baseball in the sense that, like, when we get so into our own silos and our own interests, we can forget the wider scope of things really within the industry in general. And maybe this is just something, maybe this could be, the people that I follow on social media too. Like, I probably follow a lot of people who are like into alternative different, sports, where somebody who is most mainly into baseball is probably getting all baseball card related content. And I think that number of people is actually a lot higher maybe than I expect in general. And I think this list kind of just shows me that baseball right now, I think, is king. So I guess one thing we should be hoping for, and I talked about this, is that Topps and Fanatics really have sort of, I guess, the average collector, or like somebody who is kind of doing this for fun as a hobby. I'm hoping that they have their interests in mind, as well as, breakers and people. I don't know. It can be tough, because it's just like you look at it, and with baseball being such a large swath of, again, I think that'd be the swath of the population. I don't know if I used that word correctly, but that means Fanatics and Topps right now are creating what are going to be probably some of the more popular sets. Like, if we go 20 years from now, this list, it may be like 2023 Topps or 2024 Topps baseball is going to be on this list 20 years from now. Around the same time, baseball season. So I think that's another reason why it's important for, Fanatics to really, I think, take this pretty seriously. And I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm wondering if they recognize that baseball is probably the largest sport. I think sometimes I don't necessarily. I mean, I am interested in baseball and prospecting, and I think that's maybe one of the reasons why baseball is so popular. And to be honest, one of the reasons why I think soccer could be very popular is because baseball is the overall, like, if you look at baseball cards from like 10,000 feet or whatever, if you zoom out, you're going to see different nuances that other sports don't have. You got the Bowman Chromes, you've got some of the Topps debut cards. Before they even get into the majors, they have a number of cards in a bunch of different sets. So, there's the prospecting aspect of it. There is the, they have a ton of different cards before they even get to the majors. And then if they don't make the majors before a certain date, they're not going to have cards until the next year. Now, soccer, in the sense, can be very similar, where it's like a little bit confusing what could be considered the rookie card. At least with baseball, I do think that, like, the Bowman Chrome, the first Bowman Chrome, and then the first Topps flagship card are probably, they may not be the most valuable base rookie cards. Like, Topps Chrome might be more valuable in the larger scheme of things, but I think that those two cards for baseball are pretty much the number one and number two. when it comes to, the most important cards. But there are going to be, there's Heritage, there's Bowman Chrome for rookies, there's tons of other sets that I think if you look at the nuances and everything that goes on in baseball, it makes sense that there are so many, because also there's a lot of 2024 and 2023 on this list, and even some of the same sets, like 2024 Topps Heritage and 2023 Topps Heritage are both in the top 10 on this list. So it shows how many sets there are for baseball. And like I said, I hope that Fanatics or somebody at Fanatics or somebody is doing a little bit of research here and can see this list and see that, maybe they need to take baseball. And I think that they are in certain ways, but I think they could do better in other ways, that they need to take baseball as seriously as they can until they get those NFL and NBA licenses in a couple years.